Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NRF 2024 Retail's Big Show. We are at the Amazon Pay stage, and we are so excited to have you today. My name is Lauren Selman. I am the VP of Operations for the International Food and Beverage Technology Association, and we are thrilled to be the NRF's concept partner for the Food Service Innovation Zone to bring food and beverage technology to the Big Show. Over the next 3 days, we will have 9 thought leadership sessions, and you will have access to over 50 exhibitors showcasing innovative technology in our center of the plate and throughout the Food Service Innovation Zone. We so appreciate you being here with us today, and now I would like to welcome our first session presented by Lodgile.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Could I get a show of hands in the audience of how many people in the room have some role, responsibility, or interest in improving food safety within your organizations? Good show of hands. That means we're in the right place, guys, because we'll be talking today specifically about food safety as it relates to, we'll be talking specifically about food safety as it relates to retail, answering questions like, is the food we're eating from supermarkets safe and convenience stores and restaurants? What are retailers doing today to improve food safety? What gaps remain? We'll talk a bit about what the FDA believes is our level of compliance as an industry relative to food safety, as well talk about what those gaps in food safety are costing us as an industry. And lastly, we'll talk with a supermarket retailer about their introduction and implementation of a disruptive technology, a new solution that we call thermal intelligence. I'd like to introduce the panel today. My name is Rick Schlenker. I'm one of the co-founders of Lodgile. Previous to Lodgile, I was with H-E-B Grocery for some 23 years. On our far left, we have Dr. Darren Detweiler. He's a food safety expert, an advocate, and an icon in this space for more than 30 years. You might recognize him from his latest work in August of this past year, Poisoned, The Dirty Truth About Our Food, that was featured on a Netflix documentary. Dr. Dan Detweiler is going to be assisting us over the course of the next year improve our food safety programs, as he's improved a number of programs across a number of companies and across the world. Also introduced Dean Hornsby, the founder of Blue Line Solutions. Dean and his team of chemical and electrical engineers have been working with Lodgile for the past couple of years to design and develop a disruptive technology, as I mentioned, that we call thermal intelligence, a different way of measuring temperatures of food product in your stores. And Chris Schlichting on my left is the Director of Continuous Improvement from Coborn Supermarkets. Coburn's, if you're not familiar with them, they're one of the most respected, thought leader, innovative retailers in the country, private company with over 80 supermarkets across the Midwest. And Chris is going to talk to us about his introduction of this technology and the improvements it's made on their business. To get us started, I'd like to ask Dr. Detweiler, if you would, talk to us about how safe is the food that we're eating from our supermarkets, convenience stores, and restaurants?
Well, Rick, it's an honor to be here and to work with Lodgile, to be in front of this audience. Just as much as it was an honor to work on that documentary for Netflix. You know, just like our roads and our skies, for the most part, we do have a great amount of food safety or level of safety with our food. And at the same time, we can't just stop in terms of making sure we improve it as much as we can, resting on some thought that, well, we have the safest food supply in America, so why do more? I put a lot of work into behind the camera, helping the producers and the writers and directors understand a lot of the challenges and a lot of the elements behind the true burden of disease when it comes to food safety, and then spending a lot of time in front of the camera, really helping tell that story. But let's look at a couple of clips of some of the other scenes that didn't.
We have by far in the entire world,
the safest food supply in the world.
Let's remember one thing. We have the safest food supply in the world right here in the U.S.
It's laughable. We don't have the safest food system in the world.
Cut fruit, cut cantaloupe, strawberries, caramel apples, tomatoes, onions, chicken. All these products are likely contaminated.
It is a very scary situation where you have a perfectly healthy 17-year-old female, and 48 hours later, she's dying.
It was an absolute nightmare. It was definitely from E. coli.
If I buy chicken at the grocery store, should I assume it's safe for me?
Your primary assumption should be that it contains pathogens such as Salmonella and Campylobacter.
As the documentary points out, for 30 years, the CDC has held that some 48 million Americans get sick, 128,000 are hospitalized, and some 3,000 die every single year due to failures in food safety. And in many cases, these outbreaks, and right now we've seen, even just in the last several weeks, we've seen romaine lettuce again, we've seen cantaloupe again with a high number of deaths. We've seen a lot of different produce and convenience foods be involved in outbreaks and recalls. But many of these can be prevented, and temperature, especially in terms of killing steps and holding temperatures, is a critical element. 30 years ago, I lost my son, I talked about this in the documentary, during a significant E. coli outbreak. 100% could have been prevented if the right temperatures had been used in terms of cooking that product.
Yep.
And I'm glad we're going to be exploring this topic today.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Detweiler. You know, some of the best retailers in the world come to this show. Many are in the room right now. And as an industry, we've taken a strong stand on food safety. We've done a lot to improve it. Let's talk about just some of the things that retailers are doing today relative to food safety, keeping food safe. Probably the biggest thing we've seen over the last few years as we've been in stores is such a push on training, education, certification of employees around sanitation and hygiene and temperature control. We've seen a lot more coaching on the floor where those things that are visual cues for managers like gloves and hairnets and cross-contamination are observed and coached into good performance. It's those areas that you can't see that are harder to detect, but at least the coaching is in play. We've also seen a big shift in the industry from mystery shops. Typically in the past, they were mostly focused on customer service. Perhaps the pandemic has changed that a bit. It's customer service now also with a look at food safety and best practices and hygiene as well. These last three relate to temperature control. And for temperature control, not a lot has changed in this first one. We're still doing those same walks around our facilities every hour, every few hours, recording the temperatures of assets on gauges that are in the cases. For the hot foods in particular, and some of the colder foods, we're actually probing product and having our employees record that data. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen some advances with wireless technology where sensors are being put in place to measure the discharge air temperatures in assets. So these are all things that are happening. We'd probably all agree these are good things. You may be doing a lot more than this, but there's still somewhat lack of compliance. And we're all under pressure for staffing, turnover, training, pressures on new programs, marketing initiatives, improving productivity. These all make compliance more difficult to achieve in the stores. Let's talk about what the FDA has determined from their studies that they performed in 2018 and 2021, which based on that cadence, I'd expect they're going to do it again in 2024 here. But what they've done is, in these studies, they've gone across the United States, they've sent people out to sample and look for food safety practices and the level of compliance out in the field. And what they determined, probably the most alarming statistic, is that temperature control is the worst violator of compliance out there today. Of 400 supermarket visits that they made in the US, over 90% of those visits had failed in temperature compliance. And as Dr. Detweiler has talked to, the kill step, if you will, in this process is temperature control and heating and cooling things to a proper temperature. This is a big disappointment for us. The process for measuring temperatures and recording compliance isn't a lot different than when it was back in 1982 when I was a deli clerk for H-E-B. We'd go around and we'd record temperatures on a log, Anybody still using paper logs today to record temperatures? Yep, a few people out here. And these are not filled out consistently all the time, or they're pencil whipped. So it's a big problem in our industry that we aren't leveraging technology to solve this particular issue. I want to talk now and ask Dr. Detweiler, if you would, talk to us about why a few degrees difference, plus or minus, have such an impact on food safety.
You know, we talk about food's journey quite a deal, and when we look at how one of the highest risk factors is temperature control, when we look at the words from the National Environmental Health Association, the Association of Food and Drug Officials, National Restaurant Association, the FDA, they all focus on that element of temperature, the right cooking temperatures, holding and cooling temperatures, and in that last mile of food's journey. Let's take a look at this really quick. This is, obviously for the purposes here, a simple thermometer. We want to look at the idea of so many different foods. When we're talking about the proper cooking temperature, this has to do with the idea of making sure it is that effective kill step. And there's a reason why they're not all the same temperatures. If you're talking about an egg casserole versus ground beef versus steak, it has to do with how deep into the product you have to make sure it's effectively cooked in order to kill the pathogen. Pathogens are invisible. You can't tell that it's cooked enough. You have to make sure that it's at the right temperature in order to be able to cook that. But beyond proper cooking, we have to look at holding temperatures, right? We want to keep out of the danger zone where bacteria pathogens grow most rapidly. So you want to keep hot foods hot and cold foods cold. And what we find in each one of these cases is they were dipping down into or dipping up into that danger zone because of improper monitoring and use of technology in monitoring that temperature. I would like to show two examples of emerging areas. Let's look at poultry really quick. Poultry consumption in America has grown rapidly over the last several years, but we know a few things. Salmonella, very much a principal pathogen associated with poultry, can double every 15 to 30 minutes in that danger zone and can reach counts of over 100,000 within just 3 hours, thus resulting in 1.35 million Americans getting sick each and every year from poultry that is not properly cooked or held the right temperature. But it's not just meat. Let's take a look at produce. When we look at ready-to-eat foods, I like to think that when we take an effort to make foods more convenient, like bagged lettuce, pre-cut produce, etc., they become very risky. Listeria can still here double every 15 to 30 minutes, and people are at a high risk of hospitalization. And again, we've seen some major outbreaks even just recently, and in some of those, up to 20% of those who get sick die. So these are significant numbers, and it's not an issue of it's just these foods or it's just these concerns. This is across the board, and it becomes even more risky the more we talk about convenience.
Thank you, Dr. Detweiler. Food safety is paramount. It's the reason why we have worked to develop this solution. But there are some other key costs associated with being over or under on temperature outside of food safety. And for that, Dean, you've worked with your background in engineering, you've worked with us for the last couple of years. You've seen a number of interesting things in the stores that we visited and understand the implications of temperature control on energy utilization. If you wouldn't mind, talk with us about energy consumption and over and under cooling.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for having me. Through our work over the years, what we see is a tremendous opportunity for grocery store, convenience store operators to reduce their energy costs. And you know, that's a real number today, especially the cost of everything seems to be going up. Energy's not immune to that. So there's a great opportunity there. What we also see is if you can have a cold holding asset that holds cold foods or a warm holding asset, if you can actually rise the temperature by 1 degree Fahrenheit in the cold holding asset, you know, there's up to a potential 10% savings in energy reduction. 9 degrees Fahrenheit reduction, a fall on the hot holding asset would actually deliver the same type of result there. So there's real money that goes straight to the bottom line for the operators. So but it's not an easy thing to do. It's something you just can't go up and probe a piece of food that's in these assets and say, that's the temperature, that's the decision, I'll make that change in temperature holding. You can't do that. You have to have historical data, historical operation data of the asset, as well as the current situation. There's many reasons why that asset may not perform well all the time. So you need a continuous monitoring, real visibility of that temperature data to be able to make that change. The other thing we see too is that these assets, they don't all perform the same. You can have various manufacturers. They could be in different locations throughout the store. Some near the front entrance of the store, some in the back, some heating, ventilation outlets that can all disrupt how that system operates. And so knowing that data to be able to make those decisions is critical there. And I call it personalities. The assets have their own personalities. And what we have seen working with Logile over the last couple of years with our systems in stores is really a great variance of what temperatures are set to and what they're doing inside the environments, and some real opportunities, like I said, to save and bring that money down to the bottom line.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. And as an example, what we did see when we were working with a supermarket retailer in the UK, a beautiful display of rotisserie chickens out for customers to purchase. And when we had our sensors in place, we observed that these temperatures that they were holding the birds at was 185 degrees Fahrenheit. And at 185 degrees, using the chart here for the danger zone, that's a full 50 degrees above what those temperatures needed to be held at. So a tremendous overutilization of energy in that case. And we've also seen in supermarkets and convenience stores across the US that we've worked with that cold temperature settings in assets have been lower than they've needed to be. We've seen a lot of 37, 38 degree holding temperatures when the ideal temperature to keep food safe is right at about 41 degrees. When we've gone back and interviewed store managers and facility folks about this, why are we keeping the assets so cold? The answer was reasonable. It's better safe than sorry. And if there is an incident with a case, if we're diligent about walking around, if it was at 37 and it rose to 39 or 40, then we can take action on it. And the problem is they don't have constant visibility into what those temperatures are across all the assets in their store. So it's a big opportunity for energy savings. Beyond that, retailers are here, and you could go out on the show floor now and you'll see dozens of different companies out there showing off their new food manufacturing, convenience foods, how tasty they are. You'll sample probably hundreds of things at the show. A lot has gone into making food delicious and convenient, as Dr. Detweiler spoke of. And a lot of marketing money goes into promoting this, and a lot of energy goes and costs go into putting them out on the shelves. I've asked Chris from Coburn's to talk about, outside of food safety and outside of energy utilization, what impact does this overheating and overcooling have on product in the supermarkets?
Thank you, Rick. In a retail environment, in a supermarket environment, quality is the thing that we want to display most. And for our guests, if something's held at 185 degrees, that quality starts to break down. In the case of chicken, it can become very dry, stringy, and it can be unappealing visually as our guests shop. And what that means is we're gonna spend more time pulling product, remaking product. We're gonna lose gross profit with shrink, and it is gonna affect the image that store has.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to stay with Coburn's now and talk about this shift into utilization of technology called thermal intelligence. And before I bring it back to you, Chris, why don't I ask you, Dean, if you don't mind, could you share with us your experience of evaluating temperatures with us over the course of the last 2 years, and how thermal intelligence has evolved and what you guys have helped us do?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So we've been working together, as you mentioned before, for a couple of years, and halfway through that journey, we had that aha moment where we've all been doing air temperature monitoring of these assets, and typically that's been done usually at the discharge side of these assets. That doesn't work. It's not the way to do it. We had that moment. We said, we've got to know what the food's doing. We have to understand food product temperatures. So that's where we took a shift, and we ended up developing a sensor that actually lives in a thermal engineered fluid that behaves like food. It has matches the specific heat capacity of food, and we miniaturized it. So we try to make it suitable for a grocery store environment. Merchandising is critical, so we don't want anything big and bulky that sits in there, and we didn't want to give up any performance. So we took our highly accurate long-range sensor, embedded it into this case that actually contains the thermal fluid, and this models the food temperature. So that's what we did there. We go through and just, how we validated that was we internally have our own lab. We did some in situ monitoring of real food items there where we probed the food product, had the chemistry developed for our sensor, made some iterations, make sure it was all lined up. And as you can see on this chart, we nailed it. We got the white line, the yellow line, which is the actual sensor, and in this case, the white line, the milk, aligned with each other. We actually use a 10E cycle chamber that's programmable, so we can duplicate door opening events, defrost cycles, door ajar, all the things that happen in the real world. And we went in there, and you can see just exactly how our sensor performs as it does to the food there. So the other critical part, as mentioned before, about form, fit, and function. We wanted to make sure that the device was small enough to go into these type of assets. Space it can be a constraint inside, and we wanted to make it inconspicuous so that we can put it there where the consumer doesn't get sort of suspicious about what is that thing, So, but what we wanted to do was put it where it matters. We have a saying, I saw that saying, make it matter on the NRF side. We have a measure where it matters, and we wanted to make sure that we put the sensor down here in the return grill where the actual air is recycled. These are actually balanced air systems. We wanted to make sure that we put it in return grill so we know the behavior of food, and that's really the touch point of the air temperature that's discharged down to the bottom that actually comes in last contact with what we call the most vulnerable food item in that case, and that's what our sensor will measure there. So those are all critical elements of installation and form, fit, and function.
Thank you, Dean. And from our installations with Coburn's, Chris, we learned a lot of things together. We could probably present 10 different things that we learned, but let us just, if you don't mind, talk about a few things that jumped out through our discovery together.
Sure. The first thing that we were able to see is that we had some issues in terms of our own performance. We had individuals overstocking cases. When we looked at the air sensors, they were saying, yes, the air is correct, but that airflow is interrupted. And the thermal intelligence sensors were able to tell us that there is some abuse. So it took a lot of retraining with our teams to learn what was and wasn't going to be acceptable for those case levels. I actually had one of our maintenance supervisors joke that the maintenance requests went up after we had installed thermal intelligence sensors. But we were able to be very proactive, not only in case maintenance, but also in our own habits, and a lot of times changing those habits so that they were conducive to what those cases were designed to do.
All right. This next one was a more subtle one that you guys were alerted to by our system.
Yes, we had, this is a deli hot holding case, and the team had turned that sensor, the temperature up all the way, and thermal intelligence was telling us it wasn't holding temp. As we dug in, we were able to find out that one of the heating elements had stopped working, and we were able to get that replaced. If you look at the bottom of that chart as well, you'll see that we've got a little oops there, where one of our team members forgot to turn that case off overnight. This does alert us to issues where we may have a miss on that team level with operational things. So we're able to look at that. We can address that. We can call the store and let them know that a case is out of spec for a certain time, and that store employee can take care of that so that we don't leave something on. As we shared earlier, there's a lot of cost to electricity, there's a lot of cost to refrigeration right now, and being able to save pennies makes a big deal.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the supermarkets we've worked with in Australia, this was a puzzling one. The thermal intelligence sensors and our software were alerting the store that the temperatures in this meat case were at about 10 degrees during most of the day, 10 degrees Celsius. Should have been held around 5 degrees Celsius. And upon investigation, went back and we looked at the air temperature gauges. True, 5 degrees on the air temperature gauge outside of the defrost cycles. Our gauges consistently showing 10 except for overnight hours. So this curtain that they put in place gets to the point of what Dean was talking about, this thermal balanced air system. When the curtain's down, that air doesn't escape and it doesn't get interrupted by anything outside of the case. And the temperatures you see drop down to 5 degrees, hold nicely until the curtain was raised up. The change here that was made is that up above, the HVAC system during the day and night is blowing down air, and it was disrupting the air within that asset. And because our sensors are located towards the leading edge where customers are picking up product, we caught this issue and diverted the airflow, and then the issue was corrected at that particular store. In a set of convenience stores we installed in, what we found were that a lot of times the cases that are holding cooked product are holding those products at like 175 degrees. And again, that's a full 40 degrees over the needed holding temperature, which degrades the food quality and taste, can burn the customer's mouths, but very importantly too, is burning up a lot of energy. Prior to putting in thermal intelligence at Coburn's, you guys were doing so many things, right, Chris? I mean, very advanced in your training, in your monitoring of best practices around sanitation and hygiene, doing your store walks, probing product. You even had implemented an air temperature gauge system that works with wireless sensors. And can you talk to us about what the implications and why you switched away from that technology, moving over towards thermal intelligence?
Sure. One of the big things we were missing was the ability to look at hot holding temperatures. This was a solution that incorporated not only hot, but also cold. So it checked both of those boxes. We also had a situation where those air sensors didn't mimic the food. And when we would take air temperature readings, sometimes they were on and sometimes they weren't. But our team started to ignore some of those alarms. When we moved to this system, we were able to accurately show what that food was doing, and we were able to react and really stress that reaction with our teams.
All right. And this is what the system actually looks like at your store, the way it was implemented. In your convenience stores, in your supermarkets, and even your car washes, which are not selling food in the car wash, maybe chili dogs in the winter.
Hot dogs in the summer.
Hot dogs in the summer, thank you. We're here all day, by the way. And so anyway, we put in these thermal sensors throughout the store, measuring hot and cold foods. We also utilize our Bluetooth temperature probes for measuring the cooking temperature of product to make sure we've reached that right level. Communication gateways go in place to receive all of that sensor data. Hundreds and hundreds of readings across the day, transmitted then up to the cloud. And then our software picks that up from the cloud and does all the interpretation and analysis of the data and sends out notifications and alerts, corrective actions and tasks to be performed if there is in fact an issue with temperature compliance. And this works on mobile and as well as desktop devices. At Coburn's, you implemented and you saw some significant improvements, but if you don't mind, let's focus on the big ones.
Sure. Confidence. How about that? How often can you look at food safety and say, I'm confident that we haven't missed a temperature reading? When we look back, we've got monitoring 24/7. And we do have an escalation system in place. So if there's non-compliance with that food temperature, it alerts the store. And then we've got a hierarchy set up where it continues to alert until that's been addressed. That is something that's very good in terms of peace of mind, knowing that we can show we are doing our part with the hot holding and cold holding temperatures at any point in a store. We also freed up time. I work with continuous improvement. I'm constantly asked to find ways to save labor, as I'm sure a lot of you are. This isn't a big chunk of labor, but it's a win because now we don't have to train on how to do some of the things that this system is able to do, or we don't have to worry if we've got call-ins, if we've got change and turnover. We've got a system in place that works, and it works regardless of what else is going on in that department. We don't have to remember to take a temp every 4 hours. We don't have to remember to have someone take care of this job. With proper temperature holding and compliance in place, along with alerting when excursions and deviations from that occur, we're also looking at increases in sales because our quality is better. We've got customers that purchase and they understand that what they're getting is exactly what we expect to sell and what they expect to get. We're also looking at reduction in energy from product abuse, different changes in temperature, and we're looking at savings in gross profit from limiting the amount of product loss that may come from out of compliance or product that's held higher than or lower than what needs to be, where there may be some product damage.
Yep. So thank you, Chris. We've just used up our allotment of time, our full 30 minutes, and I do want to suggest that if you are interested in learning more about this, please come by and see us at booth 2509 or upstairs at 5249. You might have an interest in this. You might have some food safety questions in general. You might want to talk about FSMA regulations coming up and how we may be able to help. You might want to talk about improving your production planning in the stores, about scheduling your employees more optimally relative to preparing foods and so forth, recipe management. These are all things that we do pretty well and would love to talk to you. I'm going to leave it now for Dr. Detweiler. You opened us up today. Can you leave us with a few closing thoughts?
Sure, thank you. You know, we've talked about minimizing energy losses, maximizing shelf life, looking at profit. And I think it's an important conversation to have, but it's just somewhere in the middle of the bigger spectrum of things. On the one end of the spectrum, none of this can take place unless our food is safe. You have to have safe food. And here we've talked about how investing in and prioritizing effective temperature monitoring is critical to that effect. And then we have what's on the other end of the spectrum. It's beautiful we can look at this as being part of the idea of the fact that brand reputation is priceless. But one thing I hope that the documentary has shown is that another element that's priceless is our consumer safety and all of our lives as well.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for coming today, and thank you to the panel for presenting. Have a great show.